Every time I'm here, the first thing I notice is the sounds of the local fauna, birds chirping and frogs croaking, the soundtrack to the wetlands which I have known since moving to this area over 10 years ago. The faint smell of salt is always present from the river which runs alongside the outskirts of the trail. This is Bunurong land. The Karam Karam swamp is rich in heritage and incredibly used to be underwater. I want to take this time to acknowledge the Bunurong people, the traditional custodians of this land of Chelsea. I acknowledge and honor your continued connection to the land and waters. I recognize that the land on which I walk has a dreaming which connects people to country and culture. The history of the Karam Swamp is a reminder of the changes which time brings. The Edithvale wetlands, which runs from Edithvale to Seaford, is all that remains of the swamp which used to span from Mordialloc to Frankston, Melbourne Water 2022. The stories of the past can guide the children to scientific thinking about what happens to our land over time and how this change affects the ecosystems which live on the land. The swamp, which used to be underwater, is a representation of evolution and climate change. There's evidence in the wetlands of the time before, as I find an artifact, which is a shell. This kind of artifact invites curiosity, which in turn sparks scientific thinking. One of the most scientific questions a child can ask is why. It is estimated that over 7,000 species of birds inhabit the wetlands, Melbourne Playgrounds 2024. This means that there are so many possible sightings for the children to explore. A game of bingo in the making, for sure. If I stop and think about the possibilities of this place to connect the children to scientific thinking and link that to Aboriginal perspectives, which this place deserves, I can imagine that this land was once used to fish and that the traps would have adorned the edges. Can the children make their own? What would we catch today? Would it be different to what was once living in these places? If we look up at the sky, can we predict the weather? The Aboriginal people had their own way of predicting weather patterns. The understanding which they have of the land allowed them to use their observations of the world around them to determine seasons which differ to our own four-season calendar, Hodger 2020. What do the children think about the system? Could they connect this with their place so well that they could feel the changing weather patterns? I want to tackle STEM and Indigenous perspectives in the same manner, naturally and in everything I do in the classroom. My hope for the future is that the two are intertwined rather than taught as two separate subjects as outlined in the Incorporating Indigenous Knowledge into STEM and Early Childhood Education, Hodger 2020. The way forward, I think, is to teach using Aboriginal learning techniques such as in 8 ways. These learning techniques are story sharing, learning by telling stories and sharing information verbally, learning maps, mapping and visualizing, nonverbal, applying hands on learning and thinking, symbols and images, using pictures and symbols to broaden understanding, land links, play based learning, nonlinear, being innovative and combining systems, deconstruct/reconstruct, watch and then do, community links, applying learning for and from community. If we look at these learning techniques, we can see a close connection with the NQS standards that see the jump from tokenism to true embedding is not a giant leap, but rather just a different point of view. The thing we have to remember about STEM in early childhood is that it's not always about the set experiences which are teacher led, but rather it's a way of being. When STEM languages are incorporated into everyday thinking, the children develop a disposition for learning which stays with them their whole lives. If a child learns early on to question and to seek knowledge, that thirst will guide them to success in their future learning. STEM is about questions which can be explored scientifically. Van Kulen, 2018. Back in the wetlands, I can see endless opportunities to question and explore scientifically. Nature offers the opportunity for loose parts play in a way which is both surprising and exciting. The natural resources are vast in the wetlands. The children can explore and experiment freely with various materials which are scattered around the wetlands, such as leaves, sticks, rocks, flowers, branches, twigs, flowers, shells, and more. Open space means the children can expel energy in an unrestricted way, which encourages more scientific experiments using time and space. How far can one run in a set amount of time? Who is the fastest runner in the class? Who can jump the furthest? The biological science of in the flora and fauna, which is vast and inviting. The physical science of exploring new areas, climbing, going round, going through, much like a bear hunt from a story familiar to all. The climate science of the weather, the spatial science of size and measurements and our significance in the vast country from which we stand.